afternoon. My name is Mark Henry. I'm the Chief Academic Officer at ISI, and it's my privilege to introduce our speaker and the recipient of the 2011 Paolucci Bagehot Book Award, Professor Pauline Maier. Professor Maier is the William R. Keenan Jr. Professor of American History at MIT, where she has taught for more than 30 years. She received her PhD from Harvard University in 1968 and has also taught at the University of Massachusetts and the University of Wisconsin. In addition to being a greatly acclaimed scholar, she is also a devoted teacher of generations of undergraduates, regularly offering the survey course in American History to 1865, for example. Her books have focused on the power of ideas in the shaping of early America. They have also recovered the human complexity of the founding experience, bringing important nuance to conventional understandings. In her first book, From Resistance to Revolution, Colonial Radicals and the Development of American Opposition to Britain in 1972, she sought to identify the causes of the transformation of generalized discontents into revolutionary commitment in the years leading up to the War for Independence. In The Old Revolutionaries, Political Lives in the Age of Samuel Adams, in 1980, she surveyed several leading men of the revolutionary generation, the generation of 1776, and distinguished their concerns and their fates from a later generation who shaped the Constitution and the new American Republic, the generation of 1787. In American Scripture, The Making of the Declaration of Independence in 1997, she examined the drafting and editing of the Declaration and the document's transformation during the early 19th century from a revolutionary manifesto into a statement of principles for established governments. That book also examined some 90 state and local declarations of independence written between April and July 1776 that had been generally forgotten, but, she argued, often made a better case for independence than did Jefferson's Declaration itself. American Scripture was on the New York Times Book Review Choice List for the best books of the year and was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award. In 1998, she received MIT's Killian Award, given to a distinguished scholar of the university for achievement. Today we honor Professor Maier for Ratification, The People Debate the Constitution, 1787 to 1788, a book which was nearly a decade in the making. Hard as it may be to believe, this is the first full-length narrative treatment of the ratification process across all the states ever written. And if you think about it, that has been an especially stunning omission in our historiography. For the writing of a constitution by a small group of gifted statesmen is not as novel an undertaking as we often think. The Polish Parliament wrote one in 1505, for example, which lasted nearly 300 years. What is novel, and indeed extraordinary, is that such a document be subject to democratic consent on a continent-wide scale. The so-called miracle at Philadelphia is less miraculous than the miracle that ensued across the several states in that year. What is more, because it is the ratifying and not the writing which made our Constitution the law of the land, in a certain sense, it is far more important to understand what the ratifiers thought they were consenting to than what the drafters were intending in their writing. That crucial distinction is almost universally overlooked by those seeking to discern the Constitution's original intent. Thanks to Professor Maier's work, we are now in a much better position to understand our Constitution, and so to understand ourselves. Ratification is a tour de force, bringing vividly to life numerous personalities otherwise lost to history. It casts new light on that oldest of American divides, the dispute between Federalists and Anti-Federalists. The book is towering in its erudition, and it is a beautiful work of prose. Already it has received numerous awards, and tonight we will honor it with the 2011 Paolucci Bagehot Book Award. Ladies and gentlemen, Pauline Maier.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, which actually will lead very beautifully into exactly what I hope to talk about, what I intend to talk about tonight. But let me first say how delighted and honored I am to be here tonight and to be the recipient of this distinguished award. Although I think I have written books of some significance in my field over a career which is getting to be, what do we say, long in the tooth? I have never won any book awards until the publication of Ratification, so I feel immensely gratified by this. And to receive a prize for a book that concerns liberty is especially moving. What could be more important? And of course, hearing about the earlier recipients of this makes me understand this is not a prize in American history. It is in a much larger sphere. And I will say that the one criticism I have received of this book from Akhil Rita-Mar, who's professor at Yale Law School, is that I underestimated the significance of the ratification debates when I said that they were the most important debate, or one of the most important debates in American history. He said it was a landmark in world history. You did it an injustice, and I will no longer do that. In any case, thank you very much, and I'm grateful to Anne Paolucci for her part and to all the members of the committee who gave me this great honor, who had a role in giving me and my book this great honor. Well, I thought what I would talk about is what Mark Henry said. How bizarre is it that this is the first book that gives a full narrative of the ratification of the Constitution? And for those of you who are a little, what shall we say, remote in your memory of American history, let me say precisely what this was. It is the event that began when the Federal Convention adjourned on September 17, 1787, and concluded roughly a year later, September 13, 1788, when the Confederation Congress declared the Constitution officially ratified. In that period, essentially, the Constitution's fate was decided by specially elected, democratically elected ratifying conventions in each of the states. And that is what Akhil Rita-Mar was saying. This is the first time in world history that such an important decision was, in fact, delegated to the people. And, of course, our whole future rested upon it. But the first history of this, the first full narrative history, compare it to the Federal Convention. We have shelves of really quite excellent books that tell the story of the Federal Convention. Some of them end with a chapter or an appendix that ticks off what happened in ratification. Delaware first, then Pennsylvania, and it's tying up loose strings is basically what this is doing. But to put this briefly at the end of a book on the convention suggested that the real story is the writing of the Constitution. That the ratification was basically a no-brainer, if you will, and therefore a non-story. And when I start to reflect on why anyone could have thought that, it strikes me that it clearly comes out of that profound reverence for the Constitution, which set in very rapidly after it was ratified. Already in the January 1788, Melancton Smith, one of the important critics of the Constitution in New York, said to his profound amazement that people were speaking of the Constitution as if it were written by God. How could this have happened? Because it was so at odds with his experience and that of other Americans in 1787 and 1788. In that period, the Constitution was attacked rigorously. It was under fire. Let me give you a couple extreme examples to make my point. There was the newspaper writer who signed Sentinel, who in October 1787 said the Constitution was the work of wealthy and ambitious conspirators, and nothing less than, and I quote, ladies and gentlemen, the most daring attempt to establish a despotic aristocracy among freemen that the world ever witnessed. And then on July 4, 1788, a group of anti-federalists in Albany did what I suppose would be to us unthinkable. They celebrated the 4th of July by ceremonially burning a copy of the Constitution.